elections. We're going to stipulate a couple of things right off the bat. Historic losses for the Democratic Party. In a typical midterm election of a first-term president, in his first midterm election, he would lose maybe 11, 12 seats. Barack Obama's party lost 60 seats. So are the losses historic? Yes. So we want to stipulate that. Okay, second thing, where did they come from? 22 of these seats came from members of Congress who had held the seats since 2002. 22 other seats were people who were just elected in the last series. So we've got a mix of long-term Democrats being replaced and some newcomers being replaced. And then we've got the Tea Party, about 30 so, maybe a few more seats taken by the Tea Party movement. So we want to talk about all of this. And to help us interpret exactly what happened, I'm going to throw it over to our panel. Oh, and of course, the thing I'm most interested in, we are about 14 months away from the Iowa caucus. So what is going to happen?
Damn, already?
Oh, yeah. Get your winter coat out. So what's going to happen going forward? So we're going to throw it over to the panel, and I'm going to start with Jessica Yellin, and I'm going to ask you all, though, to react to the same question. Help everyone here interpret the volatility that they've seen in the American electorate from 2008 to 2010. Is it an ideological shift in the country? Is this a move to the right? Were the Republicans just lucky to be in the right place at the right time? Are we technology okay here? Or do we need the mic? No. Oh, just for Roland. You need it. He's loud.
You want me to hold this?
He's good on his own.
My brother have more babies?
Just put this hand on the handheld mic. Okay. First test of my capabilities. We're starting with Jessica. Okay. So Jessica, interpret the volatility.
So first of all, I am from Los Angeles, so this is my hometown, and I will tell you, yes, yay. But most of the country is nothing like you. And
oh, that's breaking news.
Right. What I'll give you are the fact these two guys can give you opinion. I'll just give it down the middle, and then they can spin it up as they want. I think what I saw out there on the trail when I was interviewing voters and I talked to candidates is people elected Barack Obama because they thought he was going to be different. They liked his policies. There was a whole joy about being transformative and electing the first African-American president. There were all host of reasons. But the fundamental difference is he was going to change Washington. And when you talk to people who were Obama voters then, but are not now, and have questioned him, it's that he didn't change Washington. And I'll say, but it takes two sides to do this. And why do you blame him? You blame everyone. And they say, no, the Republicans didn't promise to change Washington. He's the one who said he would go there and do it. So I think he made some fundamental miscalculations, and I'll tell one little story before we move on. When I got back off the campaign trail and I got to Washington at the beginning of January of 2009, Republicans would come up to me on the Hill, or elected officials, and say, we're in so much trouble. First of all, I cannot attack this guy. He's beloved. His approval rating's at 76%. Second of all, I like him. And I don't know what to do about this. The minute the president outsourced the stimulus bill to a Democratic Congress that stuck STD prevention and smoking cessation in it, all of a sudden Republicans were like, he's acting like another old school Democrat. Oh my God. And all of a sudden they started saying, we can vote no on this. They organized against him, and it started the train rolling that led to the opposition to health care, that led to tarring him as just like any other Democrat in the White House. And he hasn't been different.
You made a point about this historic change. The mistake that we continue to make in these discussions, and I sit on the set, people say, well, you know, Harry Truman and Nixon and Humphrey, and I'm sitting there going, shut the hell up. It's a black dude in the White House. We can pretty much kick all the historic stuff out. You can no longer have a discussion about what's going on now based upon what took place 30, 40, 50 years ago. You have seen 3 consecutive change elections. You've seen it back to back to back. So when we start comparing to previous years, it can't. You did not have a situation where you have so many people now who self-identify as independents. When you have fewer people identifying as Republicans, as Democrats, that changes the whole conversation. Now, Jessica makes a great point in terms of people saying he was going to change Washington. This is a perfect example of delusional voters. Yes, I say delusional. Now Alex is like, oh no, the American people aren't delusional, there's a president. No, they're delusional. Because what happens is every 2 years, the voters say, we want to see this happen. We have people who are saying, okay, we're going to send the Rand Pauls of the world to achieve bipartisanship. Really?
Right.
And so we buy into these mythical notions of what's going to happen in Washington, and it never happens. Do I need to remind anybody that Texas Governor George W. Bush also promised to change Washington? He also promised bipartisanship. Did we see bipartisanship in 8 years? No. And so again, you have people who say one thing when they run, then the reality of D.C. hits them because the president at best is there 8 years. Official D.C. never dies. They don't leave. And so all these politicians say we're going to change the city. You are not going to change an institution like Washington, D.C. You're not. But you're right. He made the mistake of giving the stimulus bill to the Congress, and then he did take the mulligan by taking control of health care. He gave that to Congress.
He made too many tactical mistakes.
So Alex, rescue these poor voters for us.
No, these delusional voters.
It's a treat to be here on the Roland Martin show.
I'm glad you recognize
If, gosh, how do you explain the volatility of the electorate? Well, I think you can explain the Republican wave this year in a word: witchcraft. That stuff is pretty powerful, isn't it? Even forced the president to leave the country.
he could win the Crawford, Texas.
The good news, Roland, is we Republicans have agreed to talk with him when he comes back from Indonesia. Get his birth certificate. What explains the volatility? George Bush lost every single handling time congressional district in America where he had 35 or less favorable. Obama was elected because he was not George Bush. Nobody knew what he was for, just not being George Bush. We've now had another election where not being Obama was enough. They hired the guys who screwed them last time to stop the guys who screwed them now. And that was this election. Was that a mandate for Republicans? No. But was it a mandate to stop what's going on in Washington? No, yes. I don't think you can quite do away with all history. I mean, they didn't elect half and half, Democrats and Republicans, because they want bipartisanship. They took away the president's car keys. They took away Congress's car keys. They'd rather have a brake pedal on the car. Right now they saw a Congress, a Senate, and a White House, 3 accelerators on the car, and no way to stop it. And I can tell you, when I saw this election just get set in cement, we were doing focus groups around the country for different corporations. Fight for their right to sell stuff.
They got the truth just leaks out there.
God bless rich people. Oh, did I say that? And America was really upset summer a year ago. The spending bill, TARP, the health care bill was starting, the president building cars.
TARP, for the record, was more than a year ago. The Republicans tried to make that Obama.
All that, yes, but they
It's a Republican consultant.
That's why I'm pointing it out.
Remember how we were all sitting here saying, oh my God, this breathtaking agenda, no president has ever tackled anything this ambitious. All people saw was the kind of amount they were spending. Spending too much debt, too much expansion. And they decided to put the brakes on the car.
But here's where the delusion comes in. He talked about car companies. Perfect example. When they said, let's get rid of a number of GM dealerships because they had too many. Guess who said, oh no, we need to keep them because that's the local economy. They support local baseball teams. And so they have a dramatic impact in these areas, Republicans and Democrats. And so even in that case, when we were trying to change having far too many, you had people in both parties who said, oh no, what happens is we don't want to have those very tough conversations. And then you have people on both sides who don't really want to really level with the American people. Let's also talk about the American people. In March of 2000, President Obama and his policies were causing the stock market to go down to 9,000. We're sitting now, what, the Dow, 11,000. Many of the same folks who were complaining about their 401ks then, their 401ks have now stabilized. Now, the question is, whose policies stabilized that situation? Now, previously, the president got the blame for it going down. But then when it went back up, folks said, oh, well, we don't really pay attention to the stock market. So you can't complain about stabilizing the economy and then say it was wrong when the stock market improved. Now, you can't say we haven't had the jobs keep up, no foreclosure prices, but the reality is we were in such a mess created by out-of-control spending led by the GOP during President George W. Bush that you had to figure out and make tough choices. And so they paid for it, but you had to do it.
Teacher, are we doing one question per night?
I neglected in my excitement to get to the panel to invite you all one more time, if you have questions, to please write them on the index cards and hold them up, and people will come get them, because we do definitely want to get your questions in too. So I am sorry that I forgot to mention that.
Like an auction.
But I want to allow Alex to sort of respond to this, and also though, I'm wondering about this, the delusional voter, and Roland makes a good point that you can't have it both ways. And Jessica, could you say something about, is this the role of the news, of journalism, to bring these comparisons to light? Or how?
Well, I often compare, I share Roland's view of the voters. I say we should run an independent expenditure ad against the voters, because the problem is the voters are constantly saying, we want compromise and then elect people from the extremes. We want things to work efficiently, but no Washington insiders who know anything about how things work. And we want only the candidates who promise big things that cannot happen, and we want it to get done quickly.
Okay. So we all need therapy.
We need a little bit of a reality check on our expectations. But I do think that the media is to blame for most all problems on Earth, of course. But go ahead.
No, I'm just not sure I can agree with the problem with Americans.
I know, you're a man of the people.
Yes.
No, yeah, it's actually, you know, rich people are Americans too.
Oh, I forgot.
They simply don't live here.
Stunningly silent in the room at that
One
comment.
thing to think about, why has it, you know, your first question was a good one, the volatility, what explains it? And what you're seeing is a failure of big, dumb, slow, centralized, top-down institutions. The New York Times, future's not so bright. Facebooks of the world, bottom-up institutions seem to be doing pretty well. What's the last big, dumb, slow, top-down, command, we don't listen very well, institution in the country? It's really almost impenetrable, impossible to change. It's Washington. Republicans try, Democrats try, voters from both sides are saying there's something wrong at the top. When we're going to see one of these days, and if we invented our government today, we wouldn't have congressional districts. We'd have likes. We'd have a very different structure to government than we have. What we're seeing, I think, are the pangs and the pain of great change. An old institution that's outlived its time and structure doesn't respond to people. That's why we have this change. The idea that somehow voters are voting against their own interest, and that's kind of not the way the system really works. Maybe they're actually smarter than most of us, and this is what's going to force the Department of Motor Vehicles that's now running the country, and all these smart people who have all this experience and have somehow dug us into $14 trillion worth of debt. Maybe that's what's going to force them to change.
But Alex, in many ways, but you also help these people get elected. So let's not act like all of a sudden they really don't matter. Look at an example. So you have healthcare. Major initiative discussed during the campaign. It's not like we didn't know that was a topic. And so, historic issue. The president, Democrats lose mightily. So raise your hand if you actually believe there's a party, either party in Congress, who actually plans on touching immigration reform, Medicare, or Social Security. That's my point. Because we all know those are the dominant issues that we have to confront, but neither party wants to touch it because they say, if whatever decision we make, and if we change it, we might get wiped out in the next election. So they would rather kick that ball down, kick that can down the trail, let the next Congress take care of it, because the voters, as Jessica said, we say we want them to tackle the big issues. But they are afraid to tackle the big issues out of fear of losing. And so what do we have now? You have Tea Party folks who are saying no compromise whatsoever. You have folks on the far left who are saying no compromise whatsoever. But you will not find any historic change in this country where you didn't have compromise. And so if we have virtually no moderate Republicans, and if you have no conservative Democrats, show me how you're going to have compromise.
Okay, so let's jump off from that point to the Tea Party, which we have a lot of cards here about the Tea Party. Will they change the Republican Party?
They are the Republican Party.
Will the Republican Party change that?
Let's not get confused.
When was the last time you met a Tea Party activist? Not on a set.
Well, me?
Yes.
I'm born and raised in Texas. I grew up with them. The surveys done on the Tea Party, 96% are Republicans. You have those people who are Reagan Democrats, that was a CBS poll. You have the Reagan Democrats, okay, who are really the old Dixiecrats, who all converged to the Republican Party, but they are largely Republicans. The Reform Party, Ross Perot, meaning those very same people are now Tea Party people. When they talk about fiscal conservatism. So I understand where they're coming from. I'm not sitting here somehow thinking, oh, this is a whole new phenomenon. How many Tea Party people you saw backing Democratic candidates? That they are the Republican Party.
Okay, but Jessica, when you meet them, when you meet them on the campaign trail, how do they impress you?
So the misconception I think that I've encountered about the Tea Party is that they are, first of all, somehow organized doctrinaire Republicans who are trying to move the party to the right. The regular Tea Party type person I meet, and I'm talking about people who formed the Tea Party organization in their state, go to meetings, and there's a difference. If you call somebody up and say, do you want a smaller deficit? They might say yes, and they might seem a Tea Party person. But I mean self-identified Tea Party activists. It's like the guy who manages, doesn't own, but manages the local car dealership. And he has a job, but in the last year he's had to lay off 5 people, and is horrified by this, mortified, and worried about his own station in life. It's eroding. And he sees that the big banks got this TARP bailout, and the government is spending all this money they read about, and his position is getting worse and worse, not better. And something needs to stop.
But did he want the car dealership or the car company saved by the government? Because by saving the car company, they saved his dealership. But they complain about saving the car company, but he wants his dealership saved. You can't have it both ways.
It's too toxic. And some of them, if it's a Rand Paul person, they will say, no, the government should not have intervened. They should have let it fail. You're talking, that they will. There are consistent people who say you should have let it fail and let private enterprise build it up again.
So Alex, tell us a little bit about the story of the Tea Party. Is this a story Republicans can weave into a successful story, or is this a chapter that we'd like forgotten?
Okay. I'm just sitting here basking in the illumination here on the Tea Party. If you ask Americans, unlike perhaps in this part of the world, when you think of the Tea Party, it's got 60% favorable. If you ask Americans if they agree with the Tea Party on most things, about 60% say yes. It's actually not an epithet, because they see the Tea Party primarily as an economic expression. Stop spending, stop putting us in debt, and stop growing government. That's the message of the Tea Party. Republicans, the interesting thing to me about the Republican Party this year is that, we just have to talk with a few folks outside, what happened to the Democrats in '92, the convention of the New Democrat, has happened now with the Republicans. We now have the New Republican. And it's much broader than just the Tea Party this year, though they do get the most attention because they have the brightest feathers and they have the loudest mating crowds. But what's happened to the Republican Party is you do have a Marco Rubio in Florida. You have a Bob McDonnell in Virginia. You have a Chris Christie in New Jersey, all part of the rebellion, I guess, a reaction to Obama and the Democrats in Congress. You do have Suzanne Martinez, new governor of New Mexico. You have the guy who beat Harry Reid's son in Nevada, Brian Sandoval. has had a unifying force. This country has swung left of center twice in the past 20 years. With Clinton, with health care, and now with Obama. And both times it's produced this virulent reaction in Congress. I think it should tell you something about where the country is.
Let me correct Alex on something. He said,
Oh, please.
He said the new Democrat in 1992. The new Democrat in 1992 was centrist as a result of the DLC. That was the new Democrat. Coming out of 84 and 88, the Democrats, DLC, you saw them come to rise. You saw You saw a Southern governor come up in Bill Clinton. That was a new Democrat. You saw in 2006 when Rahm Emanuel went out and recruited a number of new-style Democrats to run in 2006. There are no new Republicans. The new Republicans are even more conservative than the old Republicans. The Democratic Party was changed because they said we have to go broader beyond a liberal organization to be able to have centrist and more conservative Democrats. Again, show me the moderate Republicans. They have been run out. Yeah, you, Alex, but you know you cannot run for a thing.
No, not me.
But again,
Roland, you're slicing the pie the wrong way.
But again, show me.
It's not a question of left or right. What defines the new Republicans is bottom and top. These are bottom-up Republicans who distrust old centralized authority, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and who want to empower people who believe, for example, they've got to take stimulus money, and instead of having stimulus money spent in Washington, politically and artificially to grow the economy, they think that stimulus money should be in people's pockets so they can grow the economy organically. They're bottom-up Republicans.
Don't you think
that's what's new?
Don't you think many of these Tea Party people, though, are fundamentally more libertarian in their orientation than they are Republican?
We've always had that split within the Republican Party.
Right? And
We've always had Howard Dean.
They're not necessarily loyal to the party.
Republicans are organized by an idea. Generally leave people alone. Freedom. Yes. So that's
leave some people alone.
Well, the thing that's, I think, stunning about this...
If you're military,
and when we're not faithful to that idea, we pay for it. We should.
It's interesting to me that we, several cycles ago, this conversation would have been about cultural values, social values, and we thought that there were mandates on the Republican Party was going to change. But here we're talking now about a whole different class of issues, if you will, sort of the old New Deal kind of, what is the future of this country in terms of social welfare? What can we afford? How much, debt are we willing to have in order to provide these services? Which services have to go?
Now, of course, none of them had that conversation when Bush was there, but they want to have it now. Go ahead.
Well, no, this is, so I'm curious, if you think that, is this circumstantial, or was there a message effort to shift us away from these cultural issues and back to sort of the more New Deal type
The economy collapse.
In the 80s,
I think you should answer that.
No, it's economy. In the 80s and 90s, when the California economy was drastically changed, I remember Molly I was talking about it, all of a sudden you had all these different kinds of debates when it came to illegal immigrants in terms of folks having jobs, but then folks didn't want to talk about how the base closures had more of an impact on California than anywhere else, how it was decimating towns because they were built around these various bases. There was government shutting down. It changed local economies. The reality is, we would not be, I don't think for a second, we would be having this conversation if unemployment was 7%. The fact that it's 9.6%, the fact that you've had private sector job growth over the last several months, but it has not been keeping pace with the number of jobs that you need. That has changed the whole conversation. The angst of the country has been based upon the economic issues. That's what's driving so much of this. And so what happens is, so when the federal government, you have issues there, then there's all the governors are saying, hey, we need help. But all of a sudden, then the mayors are saying, we need help. And then everybody's just simply going down. And then when you talk about making the kinds of cuts, I mean, when I listen, look, I cover city government, I cover county government, and I love to listen to people say, we need to cut government, but they say it, we need a community center, we want streets paved, we want the lights, we want the parks, we want all this sort of stuff. And then when you start asking the really tough questions, fine, show me where we begin to cut 100, 200, 300 million. Then it's like, that's real difficult. And you talk about Republicans right now. You want to cut the deficit. Okay, discretionary spending is about 500 billion. The budget's about 3.5 trillion. Let's see Republicans say they want to cut the defense. Or Medicare, Social Security.
Alex.
Balancing the budget's not that hard. You spend it, you stop. How do you do it? Government's been growing revenues at the rate of about 7.3% a year for quite a while. Spend less than that, you'll begin to balance the budget. If you freeze spending at 0% growth, you balance the budget in 2016. Freeze spending, everything, defense included. 1% growth, you balance the budget in 2017. 2% growth, you balance the budget in 2020. You could begin to set a target like that. Then the next step you could take is say, okay, now that we have a cap, we can begin to measure one of our priorities against the other. What's more important to us? And then Washington could begin to make some decisions.
But Alex, when you poll that, when you say specifically this is what will be cut, and you poll it, do a majority of Americans want those
That's
things
why I
cut?
think what the best thing
Jessica, repeat that, please.
So we're actually, sort of moving through time here, and I want to make sure we get to a lot of the topics that folks have asked about. So we have a lot of questions here about what's going to be the future of policy now that we have divided government. And so people want to know, is anything going to happen? Will the Republicans continue to be the party of no? Does Boehner have to, sort of as a part of the government, get together with the Democrats and compromise? Or is it just going to be stalemate?
Stalemate.
Craziness.
Wow. Okay, that was riveting.
John Boehner might be black by this time next year. He's halfway there.
So really, Alex, tell us now a little bit about, so going into 2012, the Republicans now part of government, they can really just continue to say, no, we don't want it, no. And that's going to set them up for 2012?
Right now, I think we're all in a situation in Washington where it's in no one's interest to be cooperative. Republicans, the dynamic that just elected Republicans, is now working for President Obama and is in fact essential to his political success. Republicans just got elected by saying, you need us to watch them. Well, President Obama's going to run for re-election saying, hey, you need me, or they're going to run everything. So what that leads you to think is that for the next 2 years, we're not going to get a lot of progress made. If you define progress as, let's reopen the saloon and everybody start drinking again, which is what the American people think Washington's been doing for the past 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years, Republicans and Democrats. So I don't see that right now this promised land of bipartisanship is going to break out anytime soon in Washington.
There are a few things that have to get done and will get done. They'll extend the tax cuts in some way, shape, or form, probably close to what the Republicans want. There's a number of issues. There's the Afghanistan issue is on the table next year, and a few other must-dos. They could compromise. We were talking about this on something education-related, but there's just no will to work with the other guys. There's no trust, and they have been too successful in demonizing what the other one's doing to break with that. It's worked. It's worked on the Republican side, and now that the president has spent 2 years doing his thing, like making the policy that people don't like allegedly, now he's going to focus for 2 years on selling it and figuring out the narrative to package it and tell people they do like it.
And the perfect example why nothing gets done is Senator John McCain. This guy runs for re-election and loses his damn mind. I mean, when you start saying, I never called myself a maverick. Oh, we got you on tape. It was in your speeches.
Just a couple times.
Right. And so he was the kind of person who said, I'm willing to work with folks on both sides to be able to achieve the kind of compromise. The voters said, no, forget about it. You look at Bennett in Utah, strong conservative, hey, voted for a couple of things, he actually compromised, threw his butt out as well. You're not going to see that. Lindsey Graham is probably, it's going to be a very lonely senator where he'll actually be able to walk across the aisle. So you're not going to have people sit here and cooperate. Okay? You're going to have people continue to say we're going to block the president's appointments to the judiciary, or we're going to see him place holes, all those crazy things. And what gets me is, and again, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican in charge, it is ridiculous when they sit here and they're making decisions that are not constitutionally based, such as one guy can put a hold on everything that's going on, and you don't have to say why you're doing it, or there's no deadline, I just feel like doing it. To me, that's nuts. Okay? That's not government. That's not democracy. That's holding the process up. You're going to see that all over the place.
And there are going to be a lot of show votes. Bills that they're going to put up say, so that you can vote for it and say, I voted for this when you run for re-election, but it won't go anywhere.
And the House would pass a lot of stuff that will stall in the Senate under Republicans, just like it did the Democrats. The Democrats passed some 400 bills that got no action in the Senate because it was a stalemate, because they said, no, you need 60 votes to get anything done.
It's going to be awesome.
The other way to look at this is that you've got a Democratic Party that's had its way with Washington for the past 2 years, whose agenda was just repudiated in an overwhelming manner, but who has reacted to the election by saying, it wasn't anything we did. It was what we didn't say. It was, as the President said the other night at the press conference where he looked like his dog died after the election, the President said, well, I didn't get out of the bubble enough. It was the crisis agenda, not my agenda. If I were only a better communicator. If that is the Democratic policy going forward, that we may require some tweaks, but no real change in direction, then whether you agree with them or not, what that's going to lead to in Washington is an inability to get anything done on a bipartisan basis, because what the President and the Senate, still majority leader, are saying is, hey, we were right, the American people just don't get it.
I gotta ask this. Alex, you lost campaigns, right?
More than anyone in America.
After you lost, tell me, after you lost, how many times did you say, man, if we had done this, or maybe did this, or maybe communicated this, how many times did you really say, you know what, our candidate sucked? When you lost, you sat there and you sort of said this and this and this.
You know,
that's what happens when you lose.
This year is that it's hard to believe that 60 of your candidates sucked and just learned to suck.
No, but I'm making a point. You talk about how the president looked. What I'm saying is, you were sitting there saying how he reacted. Typically, after you lose, that's typically what you do. A day after, or a few hours after, that's what you do.
What we should do as Republicans, and I don't know that we will, is we should give the President and the Democrats time. Because losing is hard. Roland is right. I know. And when you're standing there in front of the entire world, and they're looking at what you tried to do, the best you tried to do for 2 years, and you've just been handed your head, it takes a while. It took Bill Clinton until January 23rd when he gave the State of the Union in 1996 to figure out he needed to change direction. Their big government's over for a while. So it took a while. This president's going to need some time, especially this president's problem. I think one of the challenges he faces is he's such a great guy. And no one comes to Washington to do bad or to do evil or hurt anyone. He thinks he has great gifts, because he does. Gifts of intellect and ability and communication. If you had those gifts, you would think, you know what? I've got to use them to help people. I've got to tackle big issues that they may not understand. He does. What that means, though, is he's an elite. He's removed from people. And he forces things down the country's throat sometimes, and the country does not want. It would be great if we were a feudal kingdom, but we're not. In a democracy, you got to lead people and bring them along.
You just got a preview of the 2012
There you go. From an elite Republican.
So let's go
I
in that
personally have
direction.
nothing against politics.
We'll move to 2012.
Roland is a good friend.
Hey, we just got hard-working people in my family.
So we have a lot of questions here about 2012. A lot about the Republicans and some about Obama. So I want to start, though, with Obama. Let's assume that the economy doesn't come back. So we don't have growth between now and Election Day. We don't have, we're just playing a game here. We don't have a massive
Sounds like Washington.
decrease in unemployment. Right? So Obama can't run as the guy who fixed it. Let's just say that is not a message that's available to him.
Okay.
Roland, what does he say in 2012?
See you in Chicago.
Okay.
I mean, it's just...
Any ideas of a message for Obama 2012 if he can't run on the growth?
Yeah, it'll be what he said right now. We have invested an enormous amount, and we're doubling down on getting the rest of the way out of this ditch. The thing everybody forgets is that he was elected because he's a gifted campaigner, not necessarily because he's great at governing. People didn't know that. Once these guys hit the campaign trail again, you're reminded what their gifts are.
Right.
And all he needs is he needs to figure out what his narrative is,
Right.
and he can sell.
So do we have any idea? What narrative could sell?
Well,
Here's one.
Alex, yes?
Obama's dug himself, I think, in a little bit of a hole. Unlike Reagan, Reagan took the pain up front, early, in a more brutal fashion, I think, than Obama. Obama mitigated the economic pain successfully. We're in less difficult shape because of what he's done. But in doing so, he lengthened the process of recovery. He stretched it right into his re-election campaign. What the narrative needs to be for a president struggling against the economy, by the way, for the Republicans and Democrats, people who write movies in your town tell me that the hero and the bad guy and the villain always fight over the same thing. They'll both have the same narrative. They'll go at it a little differently. But the narrative will be, don't tell me that America's done. Don't tell me these are terrible days. Don't tell me we can't come back. Republicans need to stop saying, you know, Obama's ruined the country and we're never going to get back and our children are condemned to live with less than we have. Don't tell me that. Both sides are then going to say, this is America. We can do anything. 5% of the world's people, we produce 25% of the world's prosperity. We're still the nation, most powerful place on earth, most powerful economy. We're the place other people still dream about coming here. And by the way, no nation in history has ever had the opportunity this nation has. And you've seen some of this rhetoric, by the way, already in Obama's response the last few days. We're facing a new global economic frontier, the most promising frontier any country, any people, any individuals have ever had in history.
The new frontier has worked before.
The new global economic frontier. It worked for Clinton, it worked for JFK, it worked for Reagan, it worked for FDR. New frontiers are what Americans are good at. The next president needs to be the guy who says, follow me, we're going to go compete, win in the global economy. That's how we're going to restore prosperity here. Democrats will have an approach, Republicans will have a different approach on how to get there.
This is a hard message for Obama if he hasn't brought the growth. Follow me to the new economic frontier and right off the cliff.
And he's the Secretariat of Vision.
Yes, that, yes.
I think it hurts him when he gets into this, Wall Street's bad, Americans are good, some Americans are good, some are bad. It turns dark, divisive, it turns pessimistic. And he'll return, I think, to the Obama of the campaign. We're all good, we all have a challenge, follow me over here, yes we can.
Wall Street good, Wall Street bad. That's the Tea Party message. I mean, again, we can criticize the president for saying that, but that's what you heard from those very same folks in terms of why did you actually do it. Look, the one thing I am glad about, I can appreciate that there was a previous generation that was able to get through the Great Depression, because frankly, if this generation had to go through with that generation, we would truly suck. Because people, I mean, really, when you try to confront some of these issues we're talking about, and how do you present a narrative, I mean, again, folks want to sit here, they want to hear one thing. Well, then they really don't want to hear all the other stuff that comes along with that. So we want the nice pie in the sky, but we really don't want the very hard choices that have to be made. First of all, people keep asking, will he win 2012? We don't know. 1991, President George H.W. Bush, and let me say this also, I don't call him Barack Obama, he's President Obama. I want folks to have some respect for the office, not call him the first man. Michelle can do that, Mrs. Robinson can do that, because I say we call him President. That's just an aside. But President George H.W. Bush, nobody wanted to run against him in 1992. His numbers were sky high, 80+% in 1991. A year later, he was packing. And so this notion that nothing will change over 2 years, that made, a lot of things happen politically over the course of a 2-year period. I mean, Bill Clinton is the most popular politician now. Republicans despise this man and want to kick him out of office.
I miss it.
Boy, see, there you go. So does Mom.
Okay, so let's transition now away from the president's campaign in 2012 to the other side, the Republicans. So I think everybody agrees this is going to be very exciting. This is a huge opportunity.
You betcha.
Yeah. Yes. So, what do you guys think? Are there outstanding candidates for the nomination in 2012? Who jumps out as promising?
I like Scott Brown.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of Republicans who would like Scott Brown to run.
We have a mess. Usually there are 2 Republican primaries. There's an establishment primary, because we always pick the last next guy. And whoever was next in line is the conservative primary. It's kind of like the playoffs. And whoever wins on the conservative primary establishment go against it head-to-head. What'll happen this time? I think Mitt Romney's trajectory, he's the front runner now, but his trajectory will be the same as McCain's. Remember John McCain last time, front runner, all the money, all the support, all the machinery left over from the Bush campaign, etc. But nobody was really enthused about it. It's kind of everybody in the parking lot with the cars idling, you know, okay, let's go. Where's the girl in the red dress? There's got to be somebody better. And at some point they all leave. They go look for the girl in the red dress. I think that's what will happen to Romney. He made a huge mistake, I think, not litigating his health care plan when President Obama had it on the table. You're welcome, President Martin. When President Obama had the health care plan, that was the time for Romney to stand up, just tactically, and distinguish himself. He chose not to do that. He's now going to have to litigate it during the campaign. This is not going to be a good time for him to explain that. So I think this may be the first year in a long time, presidential year, that Republicans don't nominate their establishment from.
Right. So who else do you think it is?
It's wide open. I love it.
No, there's.
You know, I think the one guy, Republicans, and I'm not saying he's going to get the nomination, but it's going to be such a complicated process on the right-hand side. The guy I think is going to run is Rand Paul. His dad ran. He's got the list. He can raise the money. Imagine that mess. That's going to be. It's going to be.
Sherry Brown with a toupee.
It's going to be a complicated year. At the end of the day, I think somebody on the establishment side catches fire. Somebody, it could be a Chris Christie, yes. Could it be a John Thune, yes. Could it be a Mitch Daniels?
No.
Maybe. Mitch Daniels is an interesting
Catch fire and Mitch Daniels doesn't.
Governor of Indiana.
He's a very dry guy.
He ran for governor, staying in people's homes, riding a bus. Imagine if the next candidate for president, Republican side, didn't have an airplane for the press, but rode around the country in a bus and stayed in people's homes.
So,
look, nobody knew that then Senator Obama would be the Democratic nominee. The beauty of this process is it is so wide open, and it will force the cream of the crop to rise to the top. So when you throw out plenty, look, Haley Barbour is going to run. Although a very prominent Republican, I cannot give his name, did say that's exactly what we need, a Southern redneck running for the GOP nomination. That's how you put it. And so you have him, you have Thune, you have, and of course, you can throw Sarah Palin's name out. Alex and I agree. We don't think for a second she's going to run. She's getting paid way too much money, plus she has no accountability on Facebook and Twitter. But the thing is, and just like you saw on the Democratic side, the one thing that I can't wait for are those Republican debates, because you're going to have people, you're going to have those trying to claim the mantra of Reagan. You're going to have those who will run away from President George W. Bush and talk about the most fiscal conservative. And then you have possibly Mike Huckabee. He may decide to run. I think he's also happy with his Fox contract. I don't think he's going to run. But again, you know what?
Pencil run.
Don't ask his former wife that. She took care of that in GQ. But again, I personally don't think Gingrich is going to run. I think he's sort of like Sarah Palin. Keep doing the flirt, but he also understands. He gets out there, all that mess comes back up, and he'll be answering those questions in our policy.
I think Roland's right about Gingrich. I think we could save ourselves 3 or 4 months on the Republican side and just bypass that. But we're so desperate.
Jessica will love it.
We're so desperate for an ideas guy like Newt Gingrich on the Republican side that at times we even turn to Newt Gingrich.
and so just a few more words on Sarah Palin, perhaps.
It sounds like one of her speeches. A few words.
A few words. I would actually ask you to comment on this, because you sort of, I know, had some thoughts about the way she'd been treated as a candidate. And so, did we give her a fair shake, or did the...
Yes.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure that we,
Look, there are certain things that happened when... I thought it was interesting that when Sarah Palin was named, the first thing we started talking about was her ovaries.
Yes.
The very first debate and discussion was she or wasn't she pregnant with with that child? Is it possible she could have had a child? Is it not? We're not talking about who is this woman. I see some eyebrows raised. Immediately when she was named, there was this whole, it spread through the media like wildfire, that she allegedly had, that maybe this baby wasn't hers, the Down syndrome baby. Trick. So
I was saying, who the hell named a child Trick? That's what I was saying, but
there were
that's
a
just
lot of
me.
things to talk about Sarah Palin. There were a lot of things. That wasn't whether or not she gave birth to this child. So there's a gender equality. She is the first female who's run for public office who is not just female but sexy. And we don't talk about that, but it's true. Come on.
She don't get me excited. She does nothing for me. If Halle Berry ran, it's different conversation.
Legs are cold.
That aside, look, we all know the factors there. I will say I've seen her a number of times on the campaign trail recently. She lights a crowd on fire. She's very good at firing up the base. But she also started the last speech I saw by plugging her reality show. And people were there paying $20,000 a head for a fundraiser. And the first thing she says is, who's going to watch my Discovery show? So it's not clear if political office is her goal or just building her brand is her goal.
Okay, the reason you had all this drama with her coverage, all of a sudden, she's named the VP nominee. Typically, the rest of the people who were on the list, they had been surrogates. They had been out there, in many ways vetted. And so this was a totally unknown character. And you had an 8-week period where normally what we do over the course of 4 or 6 months, all of a sudden it was like, what in the world is going on? Even many people around McCain were saying, what in the world is going on? And so now, to me, I thought it was pretty stupid. The whole stuff talking about, the baby and all that kind of stuff like that. That was just utterly irrelevant. But seriously, when somebody like that comes out of nowhere, it is totally stunning to folks. And you just have folks just going nuts trying to figure out anything. Where does she come from? And so that coverage went into it. But all this complaining about in terms of how she was treated and she wasn't treated this way because she was a woman. I mean, look, if a dude gave the same interview to Katie Couric, I mean, they would have dropped them from the ticket the next day. So I don't just go for all that other stuff.
On the other hand, has anybody had a better political year than Sarah Palin? This lady has been execution perfect politically this year.
Financially.
She was, her base in Alaska was collapsing, which she could govern. She left.
She quit.
She instead has, but I'm saying yes, but look what she did. She went to a smaller pond, became the biggest fish. She has now got the power behind 1,000 thrones instead of sitting on one. She can make money. She can influence the debate, as Roland said, without accountability or responsibility. She's done the smartest thing I've seen any politician do this year, which is invent the mama grizzly, the economically oppressed Republican woman. She's gone to voters and said, do you want to be the first generation of American moms that leaves their kids with less opportunity and more debt than you were given? If she focused on that message, if she just rang that one bell, she could do something. I don't think that will happen.
I think
the minute she goes to the bigger pond,
boom,
everything she's now got in the smaller pond collapses.
She's the Kim Kardashian of politics. We don't know what the hell she does, but she makes a lot of money. You can quote me on that.
Okay.
Alex will be using it on CNN. You give me credit, Daniel.
Credit roll.
You damn right. Trademark it. Let me tweet that right now.
I did want to ask Jessica about this Twitter, Sarah Palin Twitter thing. Is it true that she will not really give interviews, that she communicates only via Twitter?
Mostly. We got an interview with her. She was on a rope line recently, and she did answer some questions. And she said that if the Republican Party doesn't listen to the Tea Party, the Republican Party is, quote, through. Those were her words.
That was 140 characters, too.
But yeah, we get her tweets, and it's, everybody's like, Sarah Palin tweet, everybody reads Sarah Palin's tweet. It's like the biggest
news. Is this a smart
news.
strategy that she has created, that when she tweets, the journalism world listens?
Because they're idiots. No, seriously, all producers, I'm sorry, I don't care. They're idiots. To me, it was no different than when a producer would say, hey, Roland, Drudge has this story up. So? I don't care. I mean, seriously, I really don't care what Sarah Palin tweets. I don't. You were a governor. You were one of 50. You quit. I'm not listening to you. I'm not. I don't want to hear what she has to say. I don't think it's news every time she tweets. Okay? She'll throw something out there and then they'll run with it. It's not. If you want to get in the game, get in the game. But I'm not going to sit here and just run around, hey, did you see what she wrote on her Facebook page? No, because she likely didn't write it. And so I'm not going for it. To me, this is the insanity of media. And we sit here and say, and we saw on election night, because even Eric Erickson and I, we rarely agree on anything. He said, why are we talking about Sarah Palin? You know, we sat here and said, well, Sarah Palin won all these races. No, she didn't. She endorsed people. Some of the people she just said out the door, she never even showed up, even campaigned with them. And folks are giving her credit for different things. And so I say nonsense. Get in the game, we'll pay attention. Until then, I don't care what you tweet.
Okay, we are close to the time we're going to wrap up. We're going to do 2 more questions. These questions I'm going to read them directly off the cards because they are, I would have a hard time paraphrasing them. So, and what I think I will do is read both of them, and then we'll have you guys just comment on any part of either one that you'd like. And then we'll wrap with this. So,
you're scaring me.
I think these are serious topics, and so we've had a lot of fun, but these are a little bit more serious. So the first question says, are we supposed to ignore the signs at rallies, the Hitler posters, the birther comments, these things that dominate Tea Party activity and have last year? Isn't this just the same thing packaged differently? It's rage around President Obama. Are we supposed to ignore this? That's question 1. The other question is, why is it that Democrats believe corporations are evil for having a profit motive? Don't corporations create jobs and pay taxes and create wealth, not just for the executives, but for everyone? When in U.S. history did capitalism become bad? And so maybe we can go right down the line and take any part of either one of those that you like, keeping in mind that we really do need to wrap. So,
I'll take the second question.
Okay.
I don't believe that Democrats believe capitalism is evil. What I do believe Democrats believe is that if you're going to sit here and run the economy into the ground, you can damn well expect to have some regulation. So don't come back and get mad when there's regulation because you screwed up and say, hey, give us a second shot. That's what you saw. They didn't want Elizabeth Warren running the Consumer Protection Bureau because they were afraid that she was too tough. I mean, that's what you see. And also, the very same people who complain about, well, the president, he doesn't really like business, they were sitting there getting their butts saved to save their big checks, but they still wanted to go back to business as usual. To me, when Democrats say, no, you screw up, we're going to regulate you, not let you run wild, I think that's what Democrats say. They don't mind profit either, but you can't disrespect people and still say, hey, let me do whatever I want to do.
I'll say one point on that, and then I'll talk about the Tea Party. The point on that is, to Roland's point, most often when I talk to Wall Street folks who hate President Obama and are terribly disappointed in him, it's with his rhetoric. But then when you point out, because he says, you know, you guys haven't helped and you've been a problem, but then when you point out that he actually saved your companies, they like that part of his policy, and that doesn't suggest that he's anti-corporate. So this is the socialist who's bailed out. I mean, you know, he's sort of caught in a double bind there. On the Tea Party point, I would just caution you on that, because I have seen there are extremist activists in the right wing and on the left wing, but we're talking about the right, who come to any event. And they do come out around Tea Party events, with some unbelievably shocking and offensive posters that are breathtakingly upsetting. But I'll tell you 2 things. They are not the center of the Tea Party. They don't represent what the Tea Party decided it wanted to be about, that they systematically went through their rallies and said, those signs are not acceptable. They would stand on the stage and say, if you see anything that looks racist or upsetting, I want you to point it out to us, I want you to tell the person, and they got rid of them. Now, some people said that they were, and that they were purging it to make it more acceptable. But whatever, okay. I mean, that is not the core of the Tea Party message, and it's not surprising that an activist movement would attract some wacko freaks who are offensive and want to do offensive things. But I would just caution you that there is something else to the Tea Party that's not represented by those above.
Excellent, thank you.
I can add anything to the Tea Party thing, so let me defend the rich. Last I checked in America, the rich don't have their own economy. When Bill Gates goes to buy a hamburger, he doesn't buy it from Sergey Brin behind the counter. This economy has never been more connected. The old linear economy where you could screw the rich guy at the end of that line without affecting everyone, we've just seen that economy disappear. You know, we've just had a banking crisis and the value of everybody's homes crumbled. In a connected world like this, class warfare is the last thing America believes is even true and reflective of the country. And that's why I think politically the class warfare battle doesn't really work anymore. You know, is there a role for appropriate regulation? Yes, but that somehow America's biggest problem right now is one American versus another, and then somehow we've decided to take our the hitters with the highest economic batting averages, and let's penalize them, and somehow that's good for the team. When the team actually has got to compete with the Chinese team, the Brazilian team, the Russian team, and there's never been a bigger prize for the winner. Global prosperity is supposed to double in the next 30 years. Ordinarily, that should be the kind of thing Americans are good at.
But you wouldn't say that if you actually had one of your houses foreclosed on when somebody did not check the paperwork and just simply stamped it. See, I mean, you can sit here and just say that, well, hey, don't penalize the person with the highest batting average, but when you have some folks who are corrupt, some folks need to be checked. If you allow them to run amok and be corrupt and then say, hey, I'm a capitalist, I'm okay, because I'm corrupt. Sorry.
Well, you know, I'm not so sure, Roland, that a lot of homes that were foreclosed on because of, you know, Wall Street corruption, or if it was because of people, you know, the goodwill of some folks in Washington who wanted people who couldn't afford homes to have.
I'm just asking, no, I asked you a question. If your home was foreclosed on, and it was because of faulty paperwork, I just don't think you would be sitting here saying, hey, give Wells Fargo a break.
Boys.
I think that my hope is that this level of discourse about these kinds of issues are what we are in store for as we lead into this new Congress and lead up to the 2012 election, and that Roland's delusional voters will be inspired by this to actually not be so delusional.
Watch CNN, don't read Sarah Taylor's tweets.
Okay, and so Steve has just one more announcement for us.
Well, before we go on, I just want to thank our great panel tonight.